Hey everyone, welcome to Build Series in New York City. I'm Lauren Moraski from HuffPost. Our next guest starred in Taxi and Who's the Boss and received an Emmy nod for his guest starring role on The Practice. He's also graced the big screen in Angels in the Outfield, She's Out of Control, and Don John. Now Tony Danza is hitting Netflix in the new series The Good Cop, playing a disgraced former NYPD officer who rarely, if ever, follow the rules. Take a look.
All right, let's go, people.
Already, I think the Vic is a pretty big fish.
Serrato Hollow Point, second one today.
Lieutenant, you're gonna want to see this.
How you doing, guys? What's happening? Hey, son of mine.
Dad.
How's it going?
You can't bring a civilian to an active crime scene.
Come on, son. I mean, she's not exactly a civilian. I mean, look at her. How you doing? I'm Tony Caruso.
You're the detective that
Did 7 years upstate. I was kind of a naughty cop. We laugh about that all the time.
They love him.
They don't have to live with him.
Anthony, your old man said you're the best detective in the city.
I told him everything I know.
Except right from wrong. That I learned on my own.
You break one rule, they all break.
You ever wonder why you're not invited to more parties?
I've been watching you two. The bantering, the teasing. It's obviously a deep form of affection. It's very sexual.
No. Oh, I don't know.
Probably not.
a cop's been killed up there on the left.
The Neptune Hotel, one of the guests was shot.
Dr. Kornbluth just posted the autopsy.
I can't see it from here, Ryan.
Is that better?
There's one thing every good detective knows.
What's that?
It's 6 o'clock. I'll tell you tomorrow.
These cop retreats are a blast.
Ethics in modern police work? You signed me up to speak?
It wasn't easy getting you on that panel. Had to slip the organizer a little do-re-mi.
You bribed a guy to get me on the ethics panel?
Cost me $50. You be pro, I'll be con. You see what happens when you play by the rules?
Excuse me.
Oh, is everything okay?
It's my father.
So, no.
You're my son again. I didn't want to tell you before, but earlier today I disowned you. I can't wait to tell the guys. Oh, you're all right.
All right, please welcome all-around entertainer Tony Danza.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you.
Oh, Tony, we're so delighted to have you here this afternoon.
Oh, it's exciting to be here, and you know, I'm really proud of the show. And Josh is just so funny. You know, he's just it's a riot. Every time I see him, it makes me laugh.
Yeah, he's hilarious. We've seen him in doing bits and bobs here and there, but this is really a full-time starring role for him, like his first.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I think, you know, I used to work with a guy. When I first put my live act together, he used to say to me, "We need a surprise. What's the surprise?" Josh is the surprise. He really is. I think, you know, he started off as a theater major, and then he got sidetracked because he had that great voice, you know, and so he's really, I'm telling you, I think this is his first love, actually, you know, playing a cop, running around. And what's interesting about it is I do a lot of singing on the show. And so I'm on a show with Josh Groban. He's fighting and I'm singing. It's just bizarre, but you know.
Switching the roles
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, someone like you, a veteran in the business, what kind of advice did you give Josh?
Well, you know, I try to do, first of all, you know, you don't have to give him too much advice because he shows up prepared. He's very, you know, when you're acting with someone, you look in their eyes and you could see that they're thinking about their lines, you're in trouble. He knows his stuff. I wrote him an email the second week of the show, how much I admired his work and his work ethic. I don't presume to be the greatest judge, but I know I'm having a heck of a great time with you, you know? And so but what I try to tell him is about the schedule, about how to, you know, you know, navigate this grueling, because it's a really grueling schedule to do these kind of shows. You do them in 8 days, one episode in 8 days, and there's 15-hour days. I mean, there's just a lot of long days, and you're out in the street, which was great. By the way, it's like my father used to say, it's hard work, but it's lovely work.
Yeah, yeah.
And we used New York as the canvas, which was, you know, and then you sleep in your own bed, which was really great.
That's the best part. You being a native from Brooklyn, growing up on Long Island, what was it like to like film everything here?
It was so thrilling. It really was. Because, you know, first of all, this is the kind of show that has to be in New York. I don't want it to be in any place else. But there's something about the city that I love so much anyway, that it infuses you with energy. It just, you know, I always say it's such an exciting place. You could travel the world here without going anywhere. You know, in order to get to Little Italy, you got to go through Chinatown. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of place we live in. And we went to all sorts of neighborhoods, and then, you know, New York welcomes you and you know, embraces you as well. It just was, like I say, lovely work.
Yeah, and you've said that this is the most fun you've had on a show, really, since Who's the Boss?
I think so.
Why
yeah.
so?
Well, the part is so much fun. This guy is, you know, first of all, it's written by Andy Breckman. And so for people who don't know who Breckman is, he's the guy who created Monk and wrote all the Monk episodes. He wrote for David Letterman, he wrote for Saturday Night Live. He's pretty much a legend in the comedic world. And you know, he makes toys and puzzles in his other, you know, it's bizarre. But so, you know, I got the script from him and it just seemed like, oh my God, this guy wrote this for me. It was named Tony too, by the way, which, although this time it's Big Tony.
Tony Sr.
Yeah. So, but it's on the page, you know. It's always about the writing, and we got just a great writer, and then Netflix. I know we're here at AOL, but Netflix it really supports their show, both with resources and with letting you do what they hired you to do.
Yeah, it's a whole different world than when you first got your start with streaming now.
Well, I started on TV when there were 3 networks, and TV went off in the middle of the night, and now I'm on a streaming service with I don't know how many other shows, and Friday when it premieres. I don't even know if they use that word anymore. I sound like an old fogey, but when it opens or whatever it does, it lands in 190 countries at one time. So it's kind of crazy. All week I've been doing interviews with Poland and Korea. It's unreal to think about it. You know, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around.
It's really crazy. I mean, this is a really good balance. I saw the first couple of episodes of a drama and a comedy. Can you talk to that and how you kind of strike that balance as an actor on the show?
Well, it's hard. And again, it goes back to the writing. He's very deft at being able to just go far enough so that we don't cross any boundaries as far as being, you know, there are times when I'm stepping over a body and doing a joke. I mean, it's this truth. I mean, but he found a way. This is sort of a throwback to like Columbo, that kind of a show. So it's a puzzle. So you have to figure out the crime. It's not just a procedural that takes you step by step. It's a, you know, and even if you figure it out in the first, you know, let's say you figure it out in the first 20 minutes or 15 minutes, you're right at the end. You feel pretty good as well. But it's a mystery with comedy, and then there's this great overlay of a father-son relationship. And Josh, this is where he comes in. So I have an older son. And I thought, I'll just use the relationship I have with my son, because we're like best pals, because I was 19 when he was born. And you know, when you have a kid when you're 19, one of 2 things can happen. You could ruin 2 lives, or you get to be the best friends of all time, because you grow up together, and he gets to know all your relatives, too. That's the other thing. But he knew his great-grandmother. But anyway, I tried to take that relationship and just overlay it, just, you know, do that. And Josh jumped right back and jumped in, you know, and that commitment and that depiction then of this father-son who are at odds a lot, because we're an odd couple, but that love that's there for them, they both have for each other, is unmistakable. And I think you know, right now it's not a bad thing to do, is show a father-son relationship that works.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this show really good, is that dynamic between the two of you. He plays the good cop, and you play the bad cop. In the first episode, one of the characters describes your character as a canker sore that won't go away. But he has some redeeming qualities as well. How would you describe Tony Sr.?
Well, you know, first of all, he started out as this exemplary cop. He's a, you know, big shot detective, everything, you know, he was the guy. And then what happened is he made a bad choice. He made one choice, and then it was a slippery slope, and next thing he knew, he was in 7 years in prison. Having said all of that, he still, by the way, you know, I sang the theme song. This is weird, you know. Like I said, I'm singing, he's fighting. This is crazy. But I sang the theme song, and the theme song is, Anthony, you're all I got. No man can untie that knot. When there's trouble on the block, I've always got your back. So it's like this relationship between a guy and 2 guys, and I don't know. I just really have enjoyed this. And when I watch it, I go, this is like what I used to feel like when I watched Columbo. So I'm excited to see how people receive it.
Well, I think it's been received pretty well. I read one review where they said Tony Danza gets more affable with age. Would you agree with that?
Well, something more with age. I don't know if it's affable.
Well, we'll see, because it debuts or premieres. I still say premieres. I think it premieres
You know,
on...
they don't like the word drop.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
don't like that.
So,
Don't say drop. So it doesn't sound right, you know.
Yeah.
They don't. It's like the connotation. They don't like that. But I don't know what you call it. I'm saying opens like a Broadway show. I don't know what the.
well, you've done Broadway. I mean, you do some musical numbers in here too. Was that? Did you help write that in, or did they say, "Hey, Tony's got the skill"? Yeah.
No, Andy came to see my show. You know, I do a show. I do a live act, and Andy came to see me. I was down in Palm Beach at the Colony, and he came down to see the show, and then all of a sudden I was singing and dancing in the show. There's an episode where Bob Saget plays a late night host, a late night talk show host. The name of the show is "Did the Late Night Host Kill His Assistant?" And Josh is after him. Josh is it's great. You know, the titles are "Who Killed the Guy on the Ski Lift?" Why kill a busboy? You know, it's who's the ugly German lady? I mean, it's nuts.
Oh my.
I mean, I'm not kidding you. So it's funny. I don't remember what I was saying. I forgot what I was saying. So.
But the song and dance was a great number to bring into it.
So
yeah.
what happened is Saget's the suspect. So my son is after him. Josh is after him as a suspect, and all I want to do is be on the show. So he puts me on the show, and so I get to dance and sing and it's him trying to muddy the waters in the investigation.
Interesting. Now, am I right that this is based on an Israeli show? Did you check that out at all? No,
I
just
didn't. I
curious to
never
see how it
saw
changes.
it.
Yeah.
I never saw it. I should see it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. You know, I really. By the way, you know, when you get a good writer like this, you know, sometimes actors like to put things in their own words. You know, they make it feel more comfortable in their mouth from the script. I want to play every syllable this guy writes.
Yeah.
I don't want to change a thing. And so I wasn't interested in any other show. It's just what's on the page. I'm not kidding you. There'd be nights when I'd be home studying my lines, because you got to study like crazy. But you study in your lines, and they were so good, I'd have to call him up and say, "Thanks for these lines." Huh. Yeah, so that's great. It's that kind of thing. Yeah. And when you get hooked up with somebody like that, it's not only a thrill, it's a gift.
What would you say, I mean, you know, at this point in your career, you owe your longevity and success to after all these years, continually getting roles, reinventing yourself?
Good fortune.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I'm blessed. But I also work hard. I put in the time. I try to keep myself in shape. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things you have to do. You have to put in your shift. And you have to be able to deal with unemployment. You know, when you're an actor, you're unemployed a lot. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. So you have to deal with that. But I've been lucky, and part of it, I think, also is you have to reinvent yourself a lot. You can't just do the same thing you did when you first started. If you just stay a sitcom actor, then there's going to be somebody better and somebody younger or somebody cheaper, you know, that's going to come along. So you try to branch out, and I've tried to do that. I've tried to. You know, the singing, the dancing, the drama as opposed to comedy, and you know, I think it's really important, and it's also important as a person to keep learning.
Yeah.
You know, this constant to be a student forever. And it's so funny because when I was a student, I didn't want to be a student. Now I want to be a student.
Right, and then you went back into the teaching world, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
You know, when I was turning 60, I was telling people, you know, I could smell 60. So I wanted to do it before I got too old. I had gone to college to be a teacher, and I'm really interested in what's going on in public education, Lauren. You know, the conventional wisdom is that there's nothing good happening in the public schools. Well, I'm here to tell you there's thousands of miracles that happen every day that teachers with very little resources are out there trying to, in spite of everything, in spite of unmotivated students, in spite of, you know, I'm going to tell you something. I was at the school I taught at, they laid off the school nurse to save money. I mean, so, you know, don't come today because if you get sick, there's no nurse. So it's hard to tell a kid how important education is when that's the way they're treating it. So I just learned, you know, you do 181 days in a high school, 3,500 kids, and it changes the way you see it. It changes your whole attitude. And by the way, I think it's one of the greatest things I've ever done. And I was so scared, and I never cried so much because I thought I really thought I bit off more than I could chew, and this was the only 10th grade these kids were going to get.
Yeah,
It's not like, if Tony Danza was here, we'll do it over. No, you got to do it now. So there was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You feel their futures,
Yeah.
your students' futures in your hand.
Yeah.
That's why teaching, let me tell you something, teaching, it's so, we should revere our teachers because it's more than a job, it's a calling.
You were discovered in a boxing ring, and I know you went. You had the skills to do teaching. You were boxing, etc. If
Well,
you
you could be a teacher, you got to be ready to
right
box.
there you go, right, exactly. But like, if you weren't discovered that day, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
It's interesting you say that. One of the things I really want to do, a part I want to play, is when I was a fighter. I mean, when I first got my acting, when I first got into Taxi, I would come back to New York, and I would go to the gym I trained at, the Gramercy Gym on 14th Street and 3rd Avenue. It's not there anymore. It was right next to Luchow's, which was this famous restaurant that was there. Anyway, there used to be a guy there. His name was Patty Flood. And he sat next to he was an ex-fighter, he's a promoter and a manager, and he would sit next to the ring. Like if this was the ring, there was a banquette over there, like from a restaurant that they put there. And he would sit there all day, and, he'd pontificate. But when he would see me, he'd go, "Hey, actor, you better play a fighter before you have to play the manager," So now I would love to play, I can't play a fighter anymore, but I would love to play a trainer or fighter. So what I've been trying to do, and this goes back to reinventing yourself as well. So what I tried to do is I've been writing a script. It's called The Hard Way. And what I did was I took the first, I boxed for 6 years. So I took that 6 years before I got the part. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to imagine what would have happened to me had I not gotten the part. And unfortunately, I don't think it's like, at the end, everybody's got their hand up in the air. I think it's a sad story because, I boxed for 3 years. I boxed every day, 5 days a week. Every day I was in a ring, bang, boom. And boxing is like swimming. You know why? Because when you go swimming, you know how you get wet? Well, when you box, you get hit. It's just, you can't get around it. And so you take a lot of punishment. So what would I be like if that had been 10 years or 15 years? Mm-hmm. And I think, what we know about the damage that, and the great fighters like Ali and Joe Louis, who all ended up like that, with terrible damage to themselves from it. I think that's the story. I got a love interest, and she has to be there at the end. But I'm working on this. It's called The Hard Way.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked that question.
Yeah,
sort of like where you would end up.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Well, we look forward to that. I mean, can you believe this year is the 40th anniversary of the, you know what I'm going to say, the debut, the premiere, whatever you want to call it, of Taxi.
Yeah, it was just last week. It's interesting. 40 years. It doesn't seem possible. It's just the blink of an eye. And what's great is that we all still hang around together, the guys from Taxi. I saw Chris yesterday. It's a touchstone in my life because, obviously it changed my life. But, I think about that a lot, how they treated me. Think about this for a second, right? So these actors, Danny, Judd, Mary Lou, Jeff Conaway, Andy, they've been knocking around for a long time. They're all looking for a show, right? Now they get this show. They get this really great show with the greatest writers. They're coming off the Mary Tyler Moore show with all these Emmys, and they get the best time slot on TV. It's right after the #1 show. They got the best director. They got everything great. Everything. Oh, but just one thing. There's this fighter that we found in New York. He's never acted, but we're going to put him in the show. And they welcomed me with open arms. I mean, I wonder how I'd react now if somebody said that to me. By the way, when they said Josh, I was like, Josh Groban, really? He's going to act? I was like, but they didn't. They just welcomed me with open arms, and I was allowed to thrive. And not only that, but being on Taxi. We have a program here in New York City at the Police Athletic League called PAL Acting. It's a teen acting program because when you teach a kid how to act, you teach a kid how to act. And what we see is so much development through performance. Mm-hmm. While they're performing, they're developing because think about it. As an actor, you got to listen. You got to stand up straight. You got to be present. You got to be part of something bigger than yourself. You got to drop your guard. All the things you have to do in life. And so through performance, you develop. And I got that 5 years. It was like being in the best school of all time. You know, surrounded by unbelievable actors. And remember, the head of the show is Jim Brooks. He wrote Terms of Endearment. He wrote Good as It Gets. He's, you know, that's the kind of people you're around. And trust me, it's always about the people you're around.
And, you know, that show was humorous, but it was also touching on real issues.
Yeah.
And so I really...
You know, a couple of years ago, there was a telethon here. They had a marathon, telethon, a taxi marathon. It was a holiday. It was like Labor Day or something. I watched 19 episodes. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. And they were great. They were great. And, you know, invariably what it's about is somebody gets in trouble and everybody goes to their aid. You know, and I loved it. I'm so proud of being in that.
And, you know, I know you said you'd be up for a reunion, perhaps, if there was an opportunity?
You know, this rebooting thing to me is kind of nutty. I don't know.
It's everywhere.
I know. I know. Why don't think about something new? That's why I'm so happy about this.
Yeah.
Because in a way, this is what's old. This is what was old is new again, and that's why this is different. But I'm just not crazy about doing something we've already done. I like to think ahead. But if you could get the guys back on Taxi, I might. I'd jump in. I think. Yeah.
It's such a good crew. But the taxi world has really changed with Uber and everything. Imagine.
You know, I was in a cab yesterday. I was in a cab yesterday with a guy, and he was complaining that he took a hit. He's in bankruptcy court. They're taking away his medallion. I mean, they really, there's a hardship here. We have to figure it out. We need congestion pricing too. That's another thing. But that's just
a lot of changes in the works here in New York. You know, I loved you on Who's the Boss growing up with that show. That show, what did you think about the ending? Because I understand that there was a point where you were like, they wanted to marry your character and Angela off, but you said no, right?
Right. You know, it just seemed to me that the show wasn't about us being married. It was always about us not being married.
Yeah.
And it was, obviously we were in love, but we never got married. And so I said to them, instead of, and by the way, I think also in syndication that hurts you because you put a punctuation on it. People know how it ended. Whereas it's indefinite now. It just can go on. So I said to them, I made that argument about the syndication, which probably was the winning argument because it's always about money. But the other thing was I thought, you know, we should start it just the way we ended it. Just have a bookend. And so we recreated the first scene. Only thing is I'm wearing a tuxedo. But other than that, it's exactly, I come to the door and I ask for my job. And she says, you know, and so I just like that sort of infinity, you know, thing about it. That it doesn't have a punctuation. So how would I love her so much. You know, I love working with Judith and you know, Catherine. Catherine I worry about. She's you know, she's not that well right now. I'm really worried about her, but and the kids, Alyssa and Dan. I mean, we just had a great time, and you know, that talk about something that's a touchstone in your life. I mean, that my life, that 8 years is quite a, it's quite a catalog of things that I went through.
Quite a run. Well, before we get to audience Q&A, I understand you're also doing your own show.
Yes.
It's a standards and song show, story show, and
And
songs. It's pretty much all of the above.
Yeah.
And you have your ukulele here.
I do have my ukulele.
And if you're up for, you know,
I would love to show you this.
show us this. This
Yeah.
is great. So, in the show, Tony does everything, really. Tap dance.
I actually play this in the show.
Yeah, he plays this in the show.
Oh, I'm nice. Well, listen, I don't want him to hear too good, you know what I mean? No, but, okay. That's good, all right. So what I try to do is, oh, by the way, I learned how to play this because of a thought for the day calendar. I never played an instrument before in my life. I had no musical training, so. And by the way, I recommend it. This is really something. It's really a tremendous stress buster, and you know. And another thing I'll tell you about, but I got this thought for the day calendar, and you know, it says things like, you know, if a kid tells you he's going to throw up, believe him. You know, it tells you things like that, and or where you know, or you know, practice kinds of random acts of kindness. You know, it's that kind of thing. One day it says, get a chord book, a ukulele, practice 30 minutes a day for 30 days. At the end of that time, you'll entertain your friends, yourself, and your family for the rest of your life. It was a long thought that day, but I went and I got the ukulele, and I did it. Excuse me, and I just taught myself, and it's really, like, you can do all sorts of things with it. You can do Hawaiian. From the land of sand and sea, I brought home a man. You know, you can do that, or you could do uke standards. 5'2", eyes are blue. Oh, what those blue eyes could do. Anybody seen my gal? Turned up hose, turned down nose. Never had no other bows. Yeah, I could do that. You know that. Or what I like to do is try to adapt the American songbook to it. So, for instance, I was working on this. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm weak and maybe I'm strong, but nevertheless, I'm in love with you. Maybe I'll win, maybe I'll lose. This thing's bothering me. Maybe I'm here for singing the blues, but nevertheless, I'm in love with you. Somehow I know at a glance the terrible chance I'm taking. Fine at the start, but left with a heart that's breaking. Oh, maybe I'll live a life of regret. Maybe I'll live much more than I get, but nevertheless, I'm in love with you.
So great.
Thank you very much.
How fun is that? Now I'm tempted to ask you to tap dance, because I know you're still working on that.
Let me tell you, I've been working with a great guy, too. I found a teacher, walked up to me on Columbus Avenue, introduced himself. He actually started tap dancing. and then I said, hey, who are you? And he said his name is Hal Shane. He's one of the original Rhythm Kings. And so I've been studying with a new guy, and it's so much fun.
Never stop learning,
No,
right? Amazing. All right, we have a few questions from the fans,
Okay.
so let's get to it before we let you go. Who's first?
Can I stay on this? Yeah, good.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
We can stay
Can I
on that.
just
They
stay
said
on
it
that?
sounds
Okay.
great. All right, first up.
Yes.
Hi, I've seen your show in Brooklyn 2 years ago, and it was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to know, with your career, what's your favorite project you've ever done?
I think it's the teaching. I think it was that show, Teach. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love. There's so many things I've done, and I've loved so much of it. Some of it I haven't, but most of it I've loved. But there's something special about that year because it wasn't just about performing; it was about teaching the kids and getting that job done, and it had an immense effect on me. As far as fun goes, this is as much fun as I've had since Who's the Boss. It really is. I mean, I'm telling you, you just can't imagine what it was like to go in every day and shoot in New York City and say these kind of crazy words.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Who's next?
Yes,
Hello, Tony. How you doing?
what's happening?
I'm a fellow boxer, Joe's Boxing Gym.
Oh, no kidding. Good.
Tony, do you believe Who's the Boss was ahead of its time compared to the empowerment of women in 1984 until now, 2018?
Well, it definitely the hook was that there was a guy cleaning somebody's house. You're cleaning the house. You know, I'll tell you something. So, guy, when I first got that job, right before I got it, I went into Columbia at the time to. They said to me, "We got some ideas for a pilot for you," and my agent took me in, and in one I was a tough New York City detective. In another, I was a daring helicopter pilot. And in the third, I was a housekeeper for a woman and her mother. And I took that one, which is bizarre, because it was the funniest. But it was ahead of its time. Remember, you had a single guy living in a house, unmarried. He's taking care of his kids and her kids. The mother was, euphemisms like crazy about sexual innuendo. But I do think it was ahead of its time. If you think about it, that's 1984. And now it seems, benign, but at the time it was a big deal, I think, yeah. That's interesting you brought that up. Guys, keep punching and keep your chin down.
All right.
What kind of preparation did you have to do to play the role of the former cop? Are there any specifics of the character of the cops?
Well, you know, the good news was it's really all on the page. I'm not kidding you. This guy's so detailed that you know. Having said that, I'm around a lot of cops because I'm on the board of directors of the Police Athletic League. And I've been trying to get this acting program that I talked about in every precinct of the city. And then have the cops have to spend, Jimmy O'Neill, the commissioner, said that he'll set a benchmark at the precinct level for the cops to spend a certain amount of time with the program. Wouldn't it be interesting? Kids and cops, they meet each other before there's trouble. Oh, what a thought. So I've been trying to do that. So I'm around the police officers all the time. And I've had, you know, you remember the Son of Sam, right, in New York? Well, the police officer who was holding the gun with the mustache, who caught him, was a guy named Eddie Zigo. That's my Uncle Eddie. So I've been around cops a lot.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Tony, for coming by today.
Oh, thank you all for
Playing the
having me.
ukulele. I
Thank
mean,
you
what a
all.
blast this was. The Good Cop premiere is on Netflix this Friday. Give it up one more time.
Lord,
Tony
thank you.
Danza.
Thank you. Very nice. Good job. Thanks very much.